What's up, guys? Welcome to your 51st Android tutorial for the new Boston. Again with me, Travis. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically set up a menu for a menu class for the most part. So what I want you guys to do first is right click on your resource folder, and we're going to add a new folder to this that's going to hold all of our menus that we will create, which will probably just be one. Again, make sure you select the resource folder and in all lowercase type menu. Hit finish. And then in our menu class, we're going to add an XML file to this. So we're going to go Android XML file, or you can go to other Android and then Android XML file. And this is just the same way we set up a layout. And generally our layout would be clicked, but now as you can see, the menu is clicked. So it kind of knows what we're doing. And then we're just going to say cool menu, something like that. Underscore menu.xml. Again, all lowercase. And then you'll save yourself some headaches. Now what we're going to do is just click over into the actual XML code instead of our layout like that, and within our menu, as before, we'd see like linear layout here, but now it knows that it's a menu as well. So we're going to set up some items within our menu. As you do the open or greater than sign, you can see it takes a group or an item. We're going to set up some items. First thing we want our item to have is a title. So instead of saying text equals, it's actually title when we're working with menus. And we're going to say about us, something like that. And then we also need to say Android ID, and we set this up just like every other time, at plus ID / and then about us is what we're going to refer to our ID as. Then just to show you guys some other stuff, we can say Android, and then for example, numeric shortcut. If they have a keyboard on their phone, they could press like number 1, 2, 3, or whatever we set this equal to, such as 1. If they press the number 1 when our menu is inflated, it's going to select this item. And also, as well, you can do Android alphabetic shortcut equal like to A, which would be about us. It'd click this menu as well. So that's enough stuff within this menu, or this item for the most part. So we're just going to copy that and create one more item, and we're going to call this one Preferences. And then for the ID, we're going to say Preferences, and then just change. I'm just going to delete these because I don't really care about those for the most part. My phone doesn't have a keyboard, it's just touch screen, so and my mouse keeps dying on me, so can't really select stuff as well. Alright, so there we go. Got our 2 items set up. Just exit out of there, and as you can see, we have our menu called cool menu. Now I want you guys to open up the menu class that we set up, and as you guys noticed in the last tutorial, I haven't really thought through this whole tutorial series that much because I was getting that error, and for this one we're kind of going to get an error as well, but it's not going to be a big deal. And I'm also going to minimize all of these methods within here and our variables, and you can do that right here by these buttons next to our blocks of code, and just minimize it, then minimize our onCreate method, minimize our onList item click method, and it kind of cleans up your code. So they're still there, obviously, so you can, maximize and minimize. Then we're just going to go within this bracket here, and we're going to right click, and we're going to go down to source again, override implement methods, and it's not under a list activity, it's under a regular activity. We have a method called on options, what is it? On create options menu. Let's look for, yeah, it's right here, sorry. On create options menu, and that's where we're going to set up our menu for the most part. As you can see, it takes a menu variable within its parameters, and this is where I said I kind of wasn't thinking, for the most part wasn't thinking through. And so basically all it does is it defines a menu variable called menu lowercase, and as you can see, it has the Android.view, so it's kind of more specific, because if we didn't include that, for example, like this, what it'd be referring to is this class that we set up called menu, which is not what we want. So we probably should have labeled this class as something different, like my menu or something, because there's an actual class called menu from the Android SDK. So thankfully it kind of imports that for us as well. It's going to know it's talking about the SDK menu class, not our menu class. And then it's going to set up this variable menu that we can work with, but we aren't going to really worry about that. Now what I want you guys to do is, this is pretty important for now, so delete this return for this first line of code that most likely got imported. Delete that, otherwise we're going to get an error. And I'm just going to leave it there to show you guys, because a lot of times people like watch the tutorials and they get an error and they don't know where they messed up. So I'll show it to you guys one more time that we need to delete that. What we're going to set up within our bracket is something called a MenuInflater, and this is going to inflate our menu for the most part. So we're going to say MenuInflater, and we're going to say blow up, I don't know, something like that. Again, we have to import our MenuInflater class so we can use its sweet methods, and we're just going to use a method called getMenuInflater. So it's getMenuInflater. This will kind of just be a method that we can use. So now we can say blow up dot inflate, which is a method from the menu class or MenuInflater class. And as you can see, it takes a resource menu item and also a menu item as well. So our resource menu item is what we just set up in that menu class. So we're going to say r.menu, referring to the menu folder and our resources, and then cool menu, and we're good for our first parameter. Again, our second parameter, it gave us some data. We're going to use that data. That gives us, and they labeled that data menu, all lowercase, so that's what we're using there. And basically all we have to do now is get rid of that error, because again, if you guys weren't paying attention, this is where we fix this. So just delete the return, and then down below we're going to say return true, and then a semicolon. And basically we have our MenuInflater working, and I'll show you what that looks like as we run the program or run the application. And again, yeah, I probably should not called this class menu when we started, but no biggie. So now when we hit our menu item right here, it pops up a little menu for us with 2 menu items. And these menu items don't do anything. That's what we're going to set up in the next tutorial if you click them, but that's all that does. So there we go. I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 50-second Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically get those list items doing something for the most part. In the previous tutorial, we set up our inflator, got our menu displaying on the screen according, or when we press the menu button. Now we're actually going to let those list items do something. Basically, you kind of like set up the on-click listener, but we're going to use a different method. So I'm just going to minimize again this on create options menu here, and we're going to import or use another menu or another method from the activity class. So again, right-click source, override implement methods, and scroll down to one, or again, it's not in the list activity, it's under just activity here, and it's called on options item selected. So just look for that on options item selected. It takes a menu item within its class or within its parameters. Hit OK, and it kind of sets it up for us as well. Again, we're just going to kind of gut it out for the most part. We aren't going to worry about sending it to the superclass. We're just going to delete this whole line of code right here and delete that. Now what we need to do is we need to kind of reference this item that's being passed in. Again, once one of these items are clicked within our on options menu, it's going to call this method for the most part. So what we want to do is check the case ID of which menu was selected. That's why we set up those IDs in the few tutorials ago. So we're going to set up a switching case, and we're just going to say item, which is being passed in, and we're going to say dot get ID, just like we've used plenty times in the past. Oh, actually, it's not get ID. It's going to be get item ID. Sorry about that. And that's going to give us the ID of an item. So there we go. We set up our switching case, set up a new pair of brackets, and then do our cases. r.id dot about us was one of them, and then we're going to say break and case r.id dot what was the other one? Preferences. Whoops. And then we're going to break as well. And now why it's giving us an error and why it gave us an error in the last tutorial, basically it's a Boolean. I don't know if I'm saying that right. I always say stuff wrong because I read in books and I never know if I'm pronouncing stuff right. So it's Boolean, I believe, and basically that's going to be a true or false type scenario, and we aren't returning any data. We aren't saying, hey, it's true or false. So what we need to do is return something. So we're going to go outside of our switching case here, and we're going to say return false. Just return something. We're just going to say, hey, it's false. Doesn't really matter if it wasn't within our switching case. So basically, if it is neither of those things, it's just going to return false, give no input back. And that's basically how we set up basically our items, and then we can do something like, well, I don't know if I want to do anything more in this tutorial. It's a pretty quick tutorial for the most part, but again, nothing too new. Just remember, we set up a basically on create options menu, and then once that menu inflates, that's what we've done in the past tutorial, gives us two items which we set up in our items resource folder, or menu resource folder. We set up two items within there, and then we're just getting the ID of those items, which is being passed in when we get a click, because those are called menu item, or it's from the menu item class. It's going to give us that item, some information about the item. Then we're just going to pull some information from that item within our switching case. We're just going to get the item ID, and then if it's the case of about us or the case of preferences, we do again whatever is within here. So it's a pretty quick tutorial, nothing too new for the most part besides just working with items within a menu. So hopefully you guys kind of relax. You're like, okay, we didn't do anything too new for the most part. You learned about a new method, and that's about it. So thanks again for watching, guys, and I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 53rd Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is a theme. Pretty simple tutorial, pretty quick. But I'll show you what a theme is real quick. As we hit our menu item, gives us our menu inflater for the most part gives us two menu items. Set up this about us, and this is what a theme can do. It just makes transparent background and displays this thing that says Travis is the coolest person I know. If you want to send him a cement truck full of bacon, he would love that. If you can afford to do so, he'd also love if you checked out his website, mybringback.com, to say what's up. And, you know, I didn't write that. That just came with SDK. Android knows me pretty well. But, yeah, that's what a theme is. Basically gives you a transparent background, makes your application look a little bit sexier. And that's for a text activity for the most part. So what I want you guys to do first is set up a new Android XML layout called About. And it can only include text. So just say one text view and then type whatever you want. For the most part, don't really worry about how it looks here, because it's going to kind of wrap it and give it a theme. But you know, just write some text, one text view, something simple that I believe you guys can do by now. I have a lot of faith in you guys. So just set that up, exit out of there, then create a new class called About Us, capital A, capital U. And set your text view to your XML layout that you set up. Again, extending activity and on create, set content view, set those up, get that reference going. Then what we need to do is go into the Android manifest to set up our new activity. And you guys want to probably copy one that has one of these intent filters already and make sure it's the default. That's what I did. I just copied this, pasted it right here. Control Shift format, said Shift, Control Shift format, and you know, copy and paste it here. Change it to your class name, which is called About Us, and change your action name to About, capital About after a package name, and again, make sure it's default. Nothing new so far, but you know, basically all we have to do now is set this up in our menu class Again, once our button about us is pressed, and we're going to do it the old school way, the first way you guys learned to open an activity. We're going to call intent I, new intent, and then just reference our action name, which is com.thenewboston.travis.about, or whatever you guys decided to have your action name be within the manifest. Now we have our intent set up. We're going to just say start activity I, which is the intent we just set up. Nothing new. So you guys are like, how do I get that theme going? Well, it's pretty simple actually. All we have to do is define that in the manifest. So we're going to open the manifest up again, and within our opening basically a clause of our activity here, we're going to add one line to this. So I'm just going to kind of separate that, and we're just going to add one line, and it's going to be referencing something called a theme. So we need to set that up by saying Android theme, and then that equals, and we're going to say at Android because we're referring to the SDK. Android at Android, and then colon, and then at style. As you can see, you can have some other things here, but we're going to say style / capital T, then theme dot capital dialogue, or just dialogue with a capital D, so dialogue, and that will give us that slick, sleek, and sexy theme to our little application, which is our about us. Now if you guys set up like a button or something within your XML file called about us, it's going to give you an error because it's working with dialogue, it's working with text, so make sure you only have like one text view or something in there, no buttons, otherwise you'll get an error. But basically that's the end of this tutorial, guys. Pretty quick, pretty simple, and adds a lot of value to your applications for like about us or whatever you guys want to use that theme for. But I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Have a good one. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically work with preferences, because our menu had the preferences option, so we're going to work with that. And basically the beauty of preferences is it will save the data even if you exit the application. So actually what I'm going to do real quickly is go into our menu and add just one more item, and this will just exit our program. So we're going to just say exit here real quickly, and ID is exit, so we can refer to that later. But let's get into it. What we're going to do is we're going to create a new folder called XML, and this is going to hold where we're going to put our preferences. So again, new folder, all lowercase XML. Make sure it's within your resource folder right here. Hit finish, and then just right click, hit new Android XML file, just like always, and we're going to call this prefs.xml, and we have to choose which kind of resource we'd like this to be, and so we're going to select preference right here. And again, this is the reason why we select this is it's going to have a lot of defined stuff for us. It's going to save our preferences and upload them anytime we access them for the most part. So that's really good. Good stuff. So then we're going to go into the XML section of our preferences and set up, or see what we can set up, and then set up some stuff. So greater than sign, and we have a few choices here. So let's say edit text preference, checkbox preference, and list preference. Those are basically the standard preferences that you're going to use. So we're going to set this edit text preference up. We're going to say Android, and just like when we set up an item, it's going to refer to a title for the most part. So we're going to say title, and we're going to say edit text, or whatever you guys want to title it as. And then we're also going to say a key. Again, this is the way that the computer or Android saves it to the most part. And we're going to just say name is the key reference, and Android, we can also do like summary. Let's do enter your name. And there we go. I mean, for the most part, we are done with this preference. Let's set up a new one. So let's go still within our preference overall thing, and then set up a checkbox. It's checkbox preference, and we're going to say again Android title checkbox and Android, and we can set this checkbox if we want it to be checked when it starts or unchecked. So we're going to say default value, which is what it's going to start as, and we can either set this to true or false. So we're going to say true, and also we're going to add a key reference. So again, it can save it, and we're going to call this key reference checkbox. It's not really gonna. This isn't really gonna do much, but we're just setting it up for the most part. And again, Android summary equals check this box for the most part. Nothing spectacular. And then we're just going to finish it by / less than sign, and let's do one last one here. So we're going to say list preference Android title list, set up a key reference. We're going to also call that list as well. Then we're going to set up a summary. This is a list to choose from. And then we're also going to set up something else called Android entries. And these will be the entries within the list. And we're going to say equals new array for the most part, or array of reference that we're going to refer to here. So we're going to say array / list, and Android also. That's good. That's good for now. So we're going to finish that off and then check it out. As you can see, we have this preference screen right here, and we have edit text, checkbox, and a list view. So that's basically going to be the end of this tutorial. Pretty short, and then we're going to set up our list array in the next tutorial. It's not going to be as confusing as the last time we set up a list array. This is going to be a little bit different, a little bit easier. So stay tuned, guys. I'll have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 55th Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically have this list that we set up in our preferences actually referred to an actual array that we're going to set up, because we already have it referring to this array called list, and we don't actually have an array called list. So all we're going to do is simply set that up. Nothing too difficult. So we're going to go under our values folder right here, and this is where we're going to set up that array for the most part. This is going to be pretty simple, nothing difficult. And again, we have this array called list, so keep that in mind. So what we're going to do is we're going to say new XML file, and we're going to call this one, it's under our values, as you can see it's checked right there, but we're going to call this array because again it's referencing something called array list, and that's what this is going to refer to. So we're going to say array.xml, hit finish, and now anytime we use this array kind of folder, it's going to refer to here. So again, we're just going to go into the XML and set this up. As you can see, there's resources within its brackets, or those are the brackets that we're going to hold some information. So that's pretty neat. It's just kind of a resource folder for the most part. So what we're going to set up is a string array, and as you can see, we have the options here: integer array, string, string array, item, whatever we want to keep in this kind of resource folder for the most part under our array XML file. So we're going to set up a string array, and what we're first going to do is we're going to name it. So we're going to say name, and this is going to be equal to list. Again, our preference tab is accessing the array called list, and that's what this is going to refer to, this list. So we have to give it the name list, or whatever you guys name that, so it actually has a list to refer to. And then all we're going to do is set up some items within this string array. So we need to finish off our string array. That's all we need to define it as. and then hit enter a few times so we can work within the string array and add some items to it. So we're going to say item, and then you don't even have to set up the item like we generally would. We just need to kind of put something within both item and the close item brackets there, and we're going to call this, I don't know, option 1, and just copy and paste this 4 times or something, however many times you guys want, and then just change the variables for something like that, save it, and then we have this string array called list, which is being accessed by our preference tab. So that's pretty cool, but let's say basically this is going to open a list and it's going to hold those 4 items within that list within our preference activity for the most part. So let's say we want one of those items to be checked to start with, and what we're going to do is we're going to set up something basically that's going to refer to the list values for the most part. So we're going to set up something else called Android, again this is within our list preference, Android entry values for the most part, and we're going to say, again, refer to another array, so we're going to say array / values or something like that, or L values, and then what we can do is we can also set some numerical values to these items for the most part. So we're going to set up a new string array within our array XML, and again just click string array, and we also got to give this the name that we just set up. So name is going to equal, again, L values, and close it off and put up some values within here. Again, item, and we're going to say this is item 1, and then we're just going to copy and paste that 4 times. And this will make more sense once we actually once I can show you guys what this is actually doing, but just as for now, just kind of follow along, and then once we run our application it's going to make a ton more sense as always. So there we go, we basically set up our list arrays and set up entries, which is going to be our list, and entry values, which is going to be kind of the options. Oh, and I'm sorry, also this entries is supposed to be at array from the previous tutorial. Apologize guys. So just make sure you change that to at array, and this one is also at array, which is both referring to this array value that we set up for the most part. And I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. We're going to work with these list items as well. So have a good one. Peace. What's up guys, welcome to your 56th Android tutorial for the new Boston. What we're going to do in this tutorial is basically set up a class that's going to handle all of our preferences, and then we can set it to open when we use our little MenuInflater for the most part. Before we get into this, again I just kind of want to talk about what the preferences are. As you guys can see, we set up this list preference. You guys don't know really what that is yet because we haven't run it on our emulator. But basically it's going to create a list with like 4 radio buttons because we set up 4 options within our array XML, and so it's going to give us 4 options, and depending on those options we want it to have a value of some sort. So that's why we set up a second array that holds the value, and so basically we can refer to this within whatever class we want. For example, if we wanted a text to have a certain size according to the preferences, we could have this array, like if the first option was selected, it's going to have the value of 1, the second option is going to have a value of 2, and 3 and 4, etc., like that, and then we can refer to that value, and if it has the value of 3 we can set the text to like 20 dp, if it has a value of 4, 25 dp, etc. So basically this is again going to save all of our data for the most part. But basically I didn't know if you guys got confused with the entries and the entry values. So basically this is what they're going to see once they select one of those options. It's going to give us the value for that option for the most part. But let's create our class that's going to be our preferences. So we're going to right click on our folder, go to new class, and we're going to call this prefs for preferences, and there we go. Now this is going to be a little different. If you guys remember right at the beginning where I probably confused the crap out of you, we extended, the other list activity for the most part, but this time what we have been doing is extending activity, but for the preferences we want to extend something else. So this might be kind of confusing because this is only the second time we've done it, and besides the first time when we set up that list activity. So we're going to extend something called preference activity because we're working with preferences, and we're going to still have all the access to our activity class. So we're going to right click, or I'm sorry, just hover over that and import it, and there we go. We have our preferences class set up for the most part. And anytime we have an activity, we want to have an onCreate method, so we're going to right click, source, override, implement methods, and as you can see there is all of our choices. Again, we can say onCreate bundle, which is what we want, and instead of saying set content view, we're basically going to set up our preference from the resource. Basically didn't really make sense, but that's what the method's called. So it's going to access where we set up our preferences tab. So we're just going to say add preference, and this again is a method, so you guys have to use this method. Add preferences from resource, and then we're going to access where we set up our preferences, which was r.xml.prefs. So there we go. We basically set up our preferences, and now all we have to do is basically open this activity. So what we're going to do is go back into our menu class where we set up our MenuInflater and our menu options, and we have this one if the preferences was clicked. I'm also going to copy this real quickly, paste it, since I added that other resource, that other item, I'm sorry, which was called exit. So there we go, Control-Shift format, and now what we're going to do is set up a new intent that's going to open our preferences, and also our exit, which is going to just finish application, because at this time only the menu class will be running for the most part, since our splash activity finished, and every time we hit back those activities finish as well. So we want to have an option for them just to close our application, so we're just going to say finish there, and then we just need to set up our intent. So we're going to say intent actually I'm just going to copy and paste this. Nothing too new for the most part. Again, we're going to call this one prefs right here, all uppercase, and then all we have to do is set up our preference activity within our Java, or within our Android manifest. Also, we need to change this to like something like P, we'll say, for preferences. It's because we were getting a duplicate entry within the same method. So then what we have to do again is just set up our preference activity that we set up, or that we created for the most part. So I'm going to copy one of those default ones and change it to prefs. Again, that's the action name that we referred to right there in our menu Java. And then we just need to change this to our class name, which was also prefs, like that. So there we go. Basically, we have our preferences set up. We're going to run the application, make sure it works, and I'll show you guys how we can use those preferences, because right now we can select them, it'll save, but they aren't doing anything. So we can access those preferences within a class of some sort, or within an activity. So that's what I'm going to show you guys probably in the next tutorial, because the splash activity, the sound on it is driving me insane. So I'm going to show you guys how to mute that for the most part. And then we hit our menu, hit preferences, and as you can see we have our default value of the checkbox as checked. Let's uncheck that just to make sure activity works. We're going to type in a name, Travis, and as you guys excuse me, as you guys can see, this is our title, and I'm just going to hit OK. And as you can see, it's our title, and then we also have the summary right here. So that's what we were setting up, and then here's our list preference that we set up, option 1, 2, 3, or 4. We're going to hit 3, and then as we check it down, you can see 3 is selected. let's go back, hit our menu, hit exit, which will exit out of our program. Let's open it back up and see if those preferences saved. So go back to preferences, edit text, has Travis saved within our application. The checkbox is unchecked, and also option 3 is selected even after we exit our application. So that's the benefit of preferences for the most part, and I'll show you guys how to actually access those preferences so they do something for our application in the next tutorial. So I'll see you guys then. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 57th Android tutorial for the new Boston, again with me, Travis. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is basically access at least our checkbox preference within one of our classes, which will be your splash activity. So what I did is I just changed the title to music and the summary that says for the splash screen. So what we're going to do now is basically go into our splash activity that we have set up from quite some time ago. It's been a while since we visited this splash activity. And so within our onCreate method, that's where we set up our media player object and we started it. But now let's say if we're going to kind of reference our preferences, and if that checkbox is checked, it's going to play it. If not, it's not. And so we're going to kind of surround this start our song method. So there we go. This is where we're going to first we have to access our preferences, and then we can use that access for the most part to see if it's checked or not. So what we're going to do is set up that access to our preferences, and we use something called shared preferences. So we just need to set up a little variable for the most part, and we're going to call this getPrefs, because that's all this method or all this thing is going to do. So we're going to say getPrefs. Again, you have to import the shared preferences, and then we just need to reference the preference manager, which again is a class. And within this class, there's something called getDefaultSharedPreferences. So we're going to hit dot, and it's only basically the only method for the most part. There's not too many methods within that class. So we're going to do that, and it takes a context within its parameters. For the context, generally we would say this or something of the sort, but we're going to get the base context. So there's also a method called getBaseContext. That's what we're going to use for this preference manager, or this shared preference object we're setting up. So there we go. We're going to kind of get the information from our preferences that we set up in the XML. So again, it's just getting the preferences. That's all this variable is doing, and then we can refer to that variable with our actual what we're trying to accomplish. And the check is basically a true, false, on, off. Just think of it as a switch. Those are called Boolean. So we're going to set up a Boolean variable that is going to determine whether that check box is on or off, or true or false. So we're going to say music, something like that. We're just checking if the music is allowed or not. And what we're going to set this equal to is our variable that we just set up, which basically got all of our preferences right here. Again, our shared preferences. So we're going to say shared preferences dot, and we have values like get Boolean, get string, get int, get long, all that good stuff. But we're going to use get Boolean because again the checkbox is a true false statement for the most part, and again we have to access our key. So let's go into our preferences XML. As you can see, our key we set up to checkbox, just like when we were working with sharing data between activities. Same kind of thing. A key is a kind of value or a file path for the most part. So we're going to say checkbox. Did I spell it like that? Yeah, checkbox right there. And there we go. That's our key for the most part. And this second parameter, again, if you guys ever get confused with something, you can hover over it and kind of gives you some details. Again, this is the name of the preference to retrieve. The key is the default value just returns if the preference has not been set for the most part, if it doesn't exist. So we're going to set it as a default to true because we want to play music for the most part, unless if the user doesn't want to. So there we go. We set up our music for the most part. It's getting our preferences and then getting the Boolean called checkbox, and if there's nothing set yet, we're just going to set it to default value of true. Now what we can do is we can set up an if-else statement around our start of our media player object that's going to play some music. So we're going to say if, and within parentheses we're going to say music equals true. Then we're going to play it. For the most part, you can set it up something like that. Then again, if our checkbox is clicked, if that'll mean it's set to true, and then it's going to play our song. If it doesn't, it's going to skip over this whole line because, you know, this is false, so it's going to skip with whatever is in those brackets. But also, just to show you guys some Java, we can delete our brackets actually, because this if statement will include the line below it. If there's more than like one line of code, you will need to use the brackets, but it knows that's an if statement for the most part, and it's going to include one line of code. Again, probably be safe to put brackets, but just to show you guys, you can do that as well. But anyways, let's check out our activity, make sure it works. Again, the default value is set to true, so we're just going to start it up real quick. And as you guys can probably hear, the music's playing right now. Let's open up our menu and go into our preferences. And as you can see, it's checked. We're going to uncheck it, hit back, and then menu exit. It's going to exit our application, hit the new Boston again, and as you can see, silence. It's beautiful, very awesome. And then just to double check our preferences as well, it's still not checked right now. So there you go. Pretty quick tutorial for the most part, just how to access our preferences and how to use it for the most part. Probably do one more tutorial how to access our edit text and our other thing. If you guys don't want to watch it, that's fine, just skip that. I'm still gonna, you know, cry myself to sleep every night either way if you watch the tutorial or not. But I'll catch you guys in the next one if you decide to. Have a good one. Peace. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 58th Android tutorial, I believe it is. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is access this edit text and also our list preference. So what I want you guys to do now is open up our data, open classes activity. This again is where we kind of set up our question for the most part, and we commented out some stuff. So we're going to add some additional information from our preferences in this class, since we had to kind of, you know, comment out some of these other lines from previous tutorials. So what we're going to do is basically set up again our shared preference little object for the most part. So we're going to say shared preferences, and we're going to call this get data as well, just like the last tutorial. It's going to be equal to the same thing. Again, we're just going to access the preference manager dot get default shared, and then again get base context. Finish off our application, and now we're going to get some information as well from our preferences. Again, we have to import that, and we're going to set up an edit text, or I'm sorry, we're going to set up a string, basically two string variables. We're going to call first string edit text, or et phone home. And what we're going to do is with et here is we're going to again say get data dot get string this time, and again we need to access our key reference. So let's open up our preference XML here, and as for our edit text, we used name, but that's what we're going to use, I guess. Basically, we're going to change our question from our preferences. And also for the default value, we're going to say Travis is. Again, that was our default question for the most part. Alright, so now what we need to also do is set up our values, which will, or get our values for the most part. We're going to say string values, because again, even though we have the values equal to 1, 2, 3, and 4, which seem like they're integers, we set it up as a string array within our array XML. So again, it's going to be a string for the most part. So we're going to set our values equal to get data dot get string, because we're looking for a string as well. And then let's check out what our key was. Our key was called list. So we're going to say list. finish that off, and then default value we're going to set up as a because if you look at this, basically our default value we're going to say 4, something like that. Again, because it takes 2 strings within its parameters for the most part, a key string and a default value. Again, in case if our preferences doesn't have anything set, it's going to have a default value of 4. Now what we're going to do is we're going to set up our if, and we're going to say values. Again, you can't compare strings like string called values equals 1, even though basically our string reference could equal the value of, the string value of 1. We have to use a method such as content equals, and then we can say equals within parentheses 1. So basically if our option 1 has been selected, our string value will equal 1, and we compare that string value to the string value of 1 right here. If that's the case, we can set up something within these parentheses. So what we're going to do is we're going to say our question, which is our text view that asks the question within this activity. We're going to say question equals, or set text to ET, which will again be our edit text from our preferences. So let's test this out, make sure it works, but again, that's kind of how we can pull from our preferences. Kind of just an overview or review of our last tutorial, but let's just make sure it works. Alright, so let's open up our menu, go to preferences, set the edit text to something like preferences are. That's what I set it up to. So we're just going to say preferences are. That's basically going to be our question if our list activity has the first option selected, which it does at the moment. But just to make sure it works, we're going to say option 2 is selected. So basically that question won't be asked. So let's go into our data, hit start, Travis's, and now let's go back, menu, preferences, change our list to option 1, which will set our value equal to 1, which again is a string, so we have to use contains or is equal to, or whatever method we use, content equals 1. So that's going to be the case because our value is set to 1 right now. So let's open up our data, hit start activity. As you can see now it says preferences are, because that again our value is equal to 1. So it's going to allow us to use that edit text, which we converted into a string for the most part, and then we use that string to set the text of this question. So hopefully that kind of makes sense, again using the preferences and how to access them. If again we close the activity, everything is going to be set for the most part, and it's going to save and then kind of open up that saved data the next time we run our application. And so again our value is set to 1, and so it's going to be preferences are. So hope you guys kind of enjoyed that, understand preferences and how they can be useful for the most part, and I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial.
Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to your 59th Android tutorial for the new boss, and again with me, Travis. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is basically, let me go back here. Again, you can switch your landscape and portrait view by 7 or 9 on your numpad, and make sure the num lock is disabled if you're on Windows. And basically what we're going to do is we're going to be able to redefine this layout, whether it's in landscape or portrait mode. And I didn't want to create a whole new layout just for this example, so we're going to use this first little activity that we created. So as you can see here, it won't really matter when we turn it to landscape mode, but let's say we had like 5 buttons or something like that, and then we switch over into landscape mode. Some of those buttons would run off the screen, and then you'd have to scroll down to see them, and that just wouldn't be that cool. So what we're going to do is set these 2 buttons to be side by side instead of vertical, so a horizontal layout there. And basically that's all this tutorial is going to be. Pretty simple, pretty easy, but basically I just wanted to show you guys the concept of you can rearrange how it looks in landscape and in portrait separately. So that's what we're going to do in this tutorial. Nothing sweet, for the most part, but it's useful. You can set again the orientation in the manifest like we've done before, I believe, so it won't rotate. But let's say you do want to allow it to rotate and you just want to switch up the basically the way it looks. So we're going to open up, what was that activity called, or that layout called? Main, was it? Okay, so we open up our main XML, and basically we're just going to grab everything that's in here and copy it. Because, we kind of want it to be the same, we're just going to change up some stuff. So now what we need to do is right here, we created a folder previously right when we were setting up this application. We haven't got to it yet, but basically this layout land is where we're going to define what it looks like in the landscape view. So what we're going to do is just right click on this folder and go to new Android XML file, and we need to call it the exact same name. So we're going to say main.xml. Again, it's a layout, but it has to be the same name as your your portrait landscape or whatever, your portrait XML. So there we go, we have that set up. Now what we're going to do is basically, let's see here, paste everything and check it out. That's what it's going to look like as of now, just like I showed you on the emulator. But now we're just going to change up something. So we're just going to copy a linear layout and paste it here. Like I said, it's not too complex of a tutorial, but we're just going to change this to horizontal, and then check it out. It's a little bit different, a little bit nicer, not really, but it works. And then we can also do something like new text view, just that appears in the landscape view, like text view, Android text. Nothing awesome, but we're gonna go with it. Android layout width is gonna wrap text. And you guys are pretty familiar with the whole XML thing by now, I hope. At least you understand how to do it, and you can mess around and get wrap content, not wrap text. What am I thinking? So there we go. Now we have this magic thing after we kind of narrow down this other linear layout because it's not appearing right now. So we're going to say for the height, wrap content, and shabam! There we go. We have our new layout that's just going to appear in the landscape view. But again, an essential thing you guys need to know for this tutorial is basically when you define two different, the portrait view and the landscape view differently, instead of letting the Android program do it itself, if you want a different layout, you need to label them the same exact name. And then the other thing is you also want to have all of your references the exact same in the landscape view as well as your portrait view. Otherwise, when you click on it, because again we defined all our buttons and everything in Java, you want to have that reference bridge into the XML the same, whether it's in landscape mode or in portrait mode. So there we go. Let's just test it out real quick. Save it and run it. And hopefully it works. I mean, that's pretty much the only thing you're going to use this layout land for. We probably aren't going to even use it again. I just wanted to show you guys you have the availability to do so if you choose. So, it's kind of nice if you're developing some kind of game that, the menu, you want all those items or all those buttons laid out a certain way. Generally, I just set the landscape or set the portrait view in the Android manifest if I wanted to do something like a game, but just giving you guys the option or the choices to do so. Like I said, I just keep talking to kind of delay some time here because I'm kind of sick. I don't know what that's about, but there we go. And let's start up our starting point activity. Everything works in portrait view. Now let's switch over to landscape view. Again, we get this magical text that only appears in that view, and it goes away once we go over there. And again, all our references are the exact same, so we're going to click this as well. And as you can see, if we if we add one here, it's at 6 right now, and if we switch it over, it kind of restarts everything. So that's something you guys will kind of want to take note of as well, because right now our total is 0 again, even though it's 6, and then we tilt our phone and you're like, crap. But for menus and stuff, it's gonna work for you. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that tutorial, even though it's kind of lame, but I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a good one. What's up, guys? Welcome to your 60th Android tutorial for the new Boston, again with me, Travis. And what we're going to do in this tutorial is basically get our customization on, you know what I'm saying? Get some customized buttons going, a little bit of graphics, some basic stuff, but can really make your app look so much better. For example, if you're a graphical master like myself, you probably you're going to need to create 3 buttons, or 3 basically images, and add it to your project. Again, make sure everything's lowercase. You want your standard button, which is right here, and then once it's highlighted, which I'll show you how that happens, and which is right here, and when it's selected, which something awesome happens. Now, just to let you guys know, if you're curious, for a side note, probably gonna do some like Photoshop tutorials on my channel at mybringback.com, and you guys can learn how to do basically graphics like this. No, I'm kidding. That just wastes everyone's time. But you are going to want 3 graphics. These are each 75 pixels by 75 pixels. And make sure when you label them, they're all lowercase when you put it into your drawable, and we're going to go from there. So there we go, we got our graphics done. And also, I didn't even mean for this to look like a flower. Like at first I wanted it to be like the sun or something, and then I was like, man, this just looks like a flower. This is crap. So I turned it into a flower. That's how much skill I have. So if you guys, really want me to, I probably could teach you how to do some graphics like that. Alright, so now that we have our 3 graphics within our project, what we're going to do is we're going to right click on our drawable and go to New Android XML file, and you're like, what? Are you kidding me? In the drawable folder? Yes, guys, I'm serious. Like, this is where the magic's going to happen. And so what we're going to do is we're going to say custom button right in here, or whatever you guys want. Custom's fine. Make sure it's a drawable. And then down here, the root element for the XML file. This kind of gives us a starting ground. We can clean it out later, but it's easier if you just go down and hit selector. So choose that within this option here, and then hit finish. And it should look something like this. So now what we need to do is we need to add our 3 items, or 3 pictures within here, which are called items. We need one that's going to be just our regular picture, so we're going to say Android drawable equals at drawable / whatever you guys label it as. I label mine as plus, and there we go, we're done with our first item. Now what we need is we need to say if it's true when it's highlighted. If that's true, then we're going to want a different picture. So we're going to say state focused, which is basically meaning if it's highlighted or if it's being focused on. We're going to say if that's true, we want Android drawable to equal at drawable and then plus highlight, or again whatever you guys labeled your highlighted image as, and then finish off that item. And one last item here, and this is going to be our if it's actually pressed. So what we're going to do now is just say Android state pressed right here. If that's equal to true, then we want to also have a different background as well. So we're going to say Android drawable, and that's going to equal at drawable / plus selected, or again whatever you guys labeled these images as. So there we go. We basically set up our custom button. Again, it's an XML file within our drawable folder, but that's fine. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go into our main XML, the one that we've been working with a little bit, and just open that up again for the portrait view or whatever view you guys want. We're going to change this add one button. So find that button, add one, and we're just going to delete the text, and we're going to say Android background equal to now our custom XML within our drawable. So we're going to say at drawable / custom, and we are good to go. I mean, I'm pretty sure we're done. Not positive. There's probably a ton of errors, and I probably messed up royally, but pretty sure we're done. So let's check it, double check like always. Yep, snip snip, clip the video because I did mess up. Told you guys. You suckers. Thought I did it right the first time. No, because then we can't learn. And learning is what it's all about. That's what makes us different than monkeys. And basically, if you guys ran that on your own and you're following along, basically the button was stretched out, and when you clicked it, nothing happened. Nothing was that awesome. It was just kind of lame. So we're just going to kind of clean up those errors because the order of the items is important. So that's kind of what I want to show you. So again, our add one button. Just change the width from 250 dp to wrap content, because that way it won't stretch it out and it'll keep it the same, as we designed it in our Photoshop skills. And then switch over to our custom XML again, and basically it was just showing this one, even if we clicked it and all that good stuff, because we have everything in reverse order. It's kind of weird the way the selector works, but it kind of runs through everything and checks it. So first we want to have this and move it to the bottom, or just kind of our default image, and then we also want to move our press state to the top. So cut that and paste it above, and now we're good to go. Promise you this time, I think. It's always a gamble trusting someone you don't know. But there we go. Because before, again, nothing would change. Now it will kind of run through everything and check if that's true or not. And I'll show you guys what it actually looks like now, if you guys were curious. I just clipped the video because I don't want to waste your guys' time, because that'd be pointless. And let's open that up. There we go. We got our custom button. And you can also add text. Like we deleted that text, you could have left that on, and it would print right over this button as is. So you guys can mess around with that as well. But as you can see, we just got our button. When we click it, you see that star for a little bit. If we click and hold, we see our flower. I'm sorry. See our flower for a little bit. And you're like, where's the selected thing? You mess up again, Travis? And I'm not positive. But basically, what the selected is when you use these arrows, for example, like this button is selected right now, or highlighted, or focused, as the Android terminology is. Then we click up. Now this is focused, our button, custom button, and that's our highlighted one. So again, you can click it, and everything works fine. And I'll catch you guys in the next tutorial. Peace.